Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of PEMpodcast, the Psychic Eye Mystery Podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Laurie, with my fabulous sister, Sandy. Here is my faithful sidekick, always kicking it out. She is really a sidekick because she does kick this shit out. Let me tell you, she's awesome. I get to do all my other, fun stuff like read for all of you and write my stories, and Sandy's back there doing all the hard labor. So I love you, Sandy. Thank you for all your support. She's pretty awesome. No one else can have you. You're mine. You are mine. You're mine. You're mine. Anyway,
no one else wants me. Trust me. No one else would want
bullshit. Me. Bullshit. Yes. Although I will entertain offers. How sweet can we make this deal?
We cannot.
I might be willing to share you.
No,
for the right price, for the
I'm
right
done. I'm just
maybe
done.
the right amount of chocolate.
Eggs.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so let's get to it because we got a lot to cover today. Great case, really, really great case. Makes me mad at. We'll discuss, but it makes me mad. Actually, this case really makes me mad. Anyway, so featured book today. Boop-a-da-doo. Got to get the boop-a-da-doo in there. No Ghouls Allowed, which is number 9. I know the number this week, number 9 in the MJ Holiday Ghost Hunter mystery. So in this one, this is the one where where my sister she reads all my stuff, before it's even published. So I send her the ARCs, the advanced reader copies. And this is the one where she called me and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" And she's like, "Well, I'm reading your book. Are you sure you're okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, why?" And she's like, "You nailed someone to a wall." I'm like, "Well, everybody needs therapy, but other than that, I think I'm okay. I think I'm fine." So, what is this one about? Nailing people to a wall?
Yeah, it's I was reading and I get to the point where you
okay, first of all, it's not like a person gets nailed. Okay, like alive, I can feel that nail going in. Nailed to a wall. Like that makes a whole lot of difference, but it does.
Gruesome
it kind of does.
I stopped reading. I called you right away. Just saying.
Oh God. This was the book that as I was doing the MJ series, I really wanted to do a zombie scene. And so I got to write one in this book. And that was the whole premise behind the setup of the corpse getting nailed to a wall and blah, 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 because I really wanted to write a zombie scene. And I have to say, I'm still very pleased with that scene. I think it was the amount of creep in that scene, I think, was chef's kiss. Perfect. Okay, so on a trip to Georgia to see her father, psychic medium MJ Holiday finds herself trapped in a haunted mansion and discovers that the South will rise again from the dead. MJ has a distant relationship with her father since her mother died more than 2 decades ago. But when MJ, her boyfriend Heath, and BFF Gilly take a break from their show Ghoul Getters to visit her family home in Valdosta, Georgia, they find Montgomery Holiday, her dad, a changed man. The source of his happiness seems to be his new fiancée, the charming Christine Bigelow. But despite the blush of new love, Montgomery and Christine are dealing with a big problem in the form of the antebellum mansion she was having renovated. After a series of strange accidents, the work crew is convinced the place is cursed, and the contractor has walked off the job. At Christine's request, MJ and her pals agree to find out if they're really dealing with some spirited saboteurs and a possessed plantation home. So yeah, I really loved the story of this book because I felt it was like really sweet. You got a lot of backstory on why MJ is the way that she is, why she's a little kind of tougher than nails, a little abrasive sometimes, a little, I don't know, a little bit of a rebel. So it's kind of all in there.
Yeah, so I like the book a lot. It was one of my
Would you get past the guy being nailed to the wall?
Yeah. I mean, I liked the Hatchet Jack one. That would creep me out in the middle of nowhere when I'm reading it. And then
Demons are
this
Ghouls' best
particular
friend.
story, because it contained a lot of the backstory behind MJ. And I really wanted to be a part of Gilly's mom's kitchen as she was,
Right?
making food. Yeah.
That's the really fun thing about writing in general, is because all the foods that I no longer allow myself to have, like all of the junk food, I get to have, my characters get to have. And who are we kidding? I don't deny myself much. So
You do not. I'm sitting here. What are you saying? Like, liar.
but I don't eat Coney dogs anymore.
Liar, pants on fur.
Yeah,
You don't
no,
what?
I don't eat Coney dogs anymore, which were at one time my absolute favorite food. But like, they're just so terrible for you. So although
How
if you
many-
put a
how many-
plate of
how
chili
many-
cheese fries in front of me with a bottle of mustard, I won't say no.
Okay. How many Cadbury eggs did you have this year?
So let's discuss client anecdotes. Do you know that around here they've like run out of Cadbury? I've been in search of the Cadbury eggs. I can't find any. I can't.
Well, you had a whole drawer full last year. I don't understand why you've run out.
I eat them all. Like, we're talking like I would go to the grocery store. I'd get like, every time I went to the grocery store, which was like 3 days a week, I'd get like 7 to 10, sometimes 20, because they were on sale. So I was like, well, better stock up.
Like the closer with her drawer full of like goodies.
From. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah. Well, it's been so good because I'm going on vacation, and I don't own a one piece. I only own a bikini. So I have to kind of keep it in. Oh God. Yes. Oh, train's here. I think the train's here. You talk.
No.
We can't have dead air. Stop it. Tell an anecdote. How was your Easter?
I don't have any anecdotes. And that horn is calling you on the fact that you only own 2-piece bathing suits and no 1-piece bathing suits.
Because I'm cheap and I don't want to go shopping for a 1-piece suit.
Well, I could have the same excuse, except it's not a suit that you'd want to see me in. So there you go. All right, let's get to your anecdote.
Okay. Guys, I'm really sorry about the train. This was really kind of poor planning, but you can tell that we're not in soundproof. It's amateur hour.
It's only going to get worse. Wait till the slideshow.
I know. Oh my God. Oh God, I have all the noise. This is the place. This is the loft with all the noise. Okay, so my client anecdote this week, I had just a most adorable reading last night for a woman who had very recently lost her father, who had crossed over, and she was a young woman. Unfortunately, she lost her father far too young. And so he came in immediately, grabbed the mic, so to speak, and was just so fun. So the very first thing he showed me right away was that he was wearing Bermuda shorts, black socks, and sandals, and had this like beat up suitcase. So he was like basically essentially transmitting that he's been touring. He's been a tourist. He's been traveling on the other side and sort of visiting stuff. And so he gave me the distinct feeling that he had been to China and to Asia, and was, exploring the Great Wall of China. And oh my God, it sounds like an eruption. This is
Not really. It's fine. Just keep talking.
yeah, no, on my end, it sounds terrible. But anyway, so he had been exploring Asia, and then he was headed to Europe, and he was going to explore the UK. And then he kept pointing to my client and was like, but you're going to Ireland. Well, it turns out her mother's Irish, and that's one of her dreams, is to go to Ireland and visit Ireland. And he's like, well, within 3 years, you're going there. And I just find it so interesting that on the other side, they're so invested and so interested in like the exploration of vacations and travel. Like, that is a kind of ubiquitous theme that when they come through to me, they either are excited that their loved ones are about to travel or will be traveling in the next year, or they've been on their own adventure. So I guess it's like free airfare over there. You can go anywhere you want. And then the other really, yeah, exactly. Well, the other really funny thing was he was telling me felt nimble and he felt really, really good. And he's like, over here, it's just wonderful. And he's like, and you can fly. You know, he was sort of mimicking, like, you don't need an airplane, you don't need a device. If you want to fly, you could just think and then you're flying, which I found just absolutely adorable. And then we were talking about her mother, who's been going through a very difficult time. Obviously, she lost her husband, and there's been some other drama kind of in the family. And his perspective was really interesting. He gave me the perspective of like looking down on someone who was in the middle of a long hike and they were tired and thirsty and they just wanted to stop. But like from his perspective, his was like bird view. And he was like, no, the finish line is up here. You know, you can just keep going. So it was an empathetic, there was like a feeling of empathy, but not a, okay, it's okay to give up, you know, okay, it's okay to stop, you know, kind of thing. His perspective was, you're so close to the finish, just keep going, just keep marching. And as terrible as we feel sometimes our life can get, not how difficult our life can get, from their perspective, it's like, it's nothing. It's just kind of a long sort of, a little bit of a difficulty in the middle of a journey, you know?
So waving your fists, why God, why, really is futile because they don't care.
Totally. That's accompanied by, you know, excessive eye roll over there. Like, oh God, this drama queen, you know, again with the drama. And that isn't to say that people don't go through terrible things. I mean, we've got enough like really, really terrible things going on in the world right now. And that their perspective is so cavalier about, you know, like what's happening in the Ukraine, right? Like they are absolutely not cavalier about that. And I don't think that their perspective would be like, well, the Ukrainians are in the middle of a long hike. I think that they are, it's all relative, right? It's all relative. So our struggles with a crappy job or difficulties with a family member or struggles with relationships, right? That is kind of what I'm talking about when their perspective from up there is like, you can do this, you got this. You know, it's just you're almost there. You got it. You know, just keep going. Just keep going. As Sandy and I have a very dear friend, my best friend, and Sandy's very dear friend as well, Leon. She likes to say, anyone can run for 2 miles. So her whole thing is, because she's got me through marathons, and she got me through an ultra once that I actually ran with her on a whim, zero training, zero.
Let's just
training.
be clear, Leanne.
And I entered a
runs
31-mile race.
Yeah, she runs 100 milers for fun.
Yeah, this is Leanne, uphill.
So anybody can do 2 miles.
Nothing for her, right? So anyway, so we refer to that race, the 31 milers, the Trail of Tears. Well, I refer to that race as the Trail of Tears. And Leanne was always like, you can just run 2 more miles. It's okay. You know, you can run 2 miles. We can walk after that, but 2 miles you can run. And that's kind of how I got through it. Although I will say there was one point at which a guy passed us and was like, way to go, ladies, only 2 more miles. And you know, this is where the 2-mile anecdote comes in. Only 2 more miles to go. And then Lee goes, no, it's 31 miles, not 30. There's 3 more miles to go. At which point I burst into tears because I was just done. And she looks back and she was just so, oh, honey. Oh, she goes, it's okay to cry, but you're wasting salt and water and you don't have any to spare. So suck it up, right? So I did. I made it. I finished it. Couldn't walk afterwards, but I did it. So, you know, it's similar to that. They're looking at us like, you know, it's 2 or 3 more miles. You can do this. You got it. So that's my anecdote. So when you're going through a hard time, just call out to the other side, and they will remind you that A, you signed up for this. B, B, you have it in you to finish the race. You really do. Even though you think you don't in that moment, you do. All right. Okay. Sands, let me kick it over to you, my love. And you have a great, great intro, great case. I loved digging into this case, actually. I thought it was super interesting. So take it away.
So this is the third in our series of now 4 issues that have happened on cruise ships. This one involves a woman named Rebecca Coriam, who was last seen aboard a Disney cruise ship on March 22nd, 2011. And how and why she disappeared is an enduring mystery. Rebecca was a crew member on one of the Disney ships. So according to insider.com, a job on a cruise ship might seem like a really great opportunity for kind of a relaxed pace and, beautiful scenery. But the unusual contracts that employees typically sign with these cruise lines often results in schedules that are anything but relaxed. And instead of like a traditional 5-day work week schedule, ship employees typically work a full 7 days, and they do that for the duration of their contract, which can range anywhere from 2 months to 11 months. The average is about a 4 to 8 month type of contract. And the hours, in addition to working 7 days a week, are also very intense. They can run from about 8 to nearly 20 hours a day, with the average being about a 12-hour day. And these extended hours for months at a time can quickly lead to exhaustion and depression and anxiety, which is especially true among young, inexperienced workers. And so I lead that off with respect to the fact that Rebecca was a crew member working on a Disney cruise ship, and wanted to sort of, again, highlight some of the challenges that people face with respect to being on a cruise. And I also just want to emphasize that if you do decide to go on a cruise, at the end of your trip, if you've never been on one before, it's customary to provide a tip to your purser, who then distributes tips to all the other crew members. So bear in mind, they are working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts, and to consider tipping them generously as a result. For some crew members, this is the only income that they have, and oftentimes are sending it home. So, right. So let me get into the story. So early on the morning of March 22nd, 2011, 24-year-old Rebecca Coriam, a crew member on the cruise ship Disney Wonder, was last seen on closed circuit TV having a phone conversation that appeared to be causing her some distress. Several hours later, she missed the beginning of her work shift and could not be located anywhere aboard the ship, nor in the waters off the Pacific coast of Mexico where the ship was cruising. Rebecca, it seemed, had simply vanished and without a trace. The ongoing investigation into her disappearance is the first such incident in the history of the Disney Cruise Lines. Rebecca was born on March 11, 1987 in Chester, England, to her parents Michael and Anne Maria Coriam. And following her graduation from Exeter University with a degree in sports science, Rebecca joined the crew of the Disney Wonder in June of 2010 to work in their youth activities program. It was only 9 months later that Rebecca disappeared. Rebecca reportedly left her job as it suited her friendly, happy, and upbeat, and at times mischievous personality. Rebecca, along with her other castmates, were contracted to work 7 days a week for 4, 6, or 8 month stints before being granted a few months off. The youth activities team, dressed in yellow tops and blue pants, typically cared for children in the Oceaneers Club on Deck 5. And these team members did not have set hours, but instead were on duty so long as there were kids in need of entertaining. Disney employees rarely spent time in their tiny, windowless, below sea level cabins, and instead congregated in crew-only areas like the library, the gym, game room, and the swimming pool deck on Deck 5, located in the fore section of the cruise ship. Around the railings of the tiny pool area is a 6-foot steel wall, high enough to completely block any views as it reaches well above the head height, and making it very difficult for someone to fall overboard from the pool deck. On the evening of March 21st, 2011, the Disney Wonder left Los Angeles, California, en route to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And once at sea, Rebecca sent a message to her parents via Facebook, letting them know she would call them the next day. Her fellow castmate and former lover, Tracy Medley, claims that late that evening, Rebecca was drinking heavily and was suffering a mental breakdown, possibly because of her struggles surrounding her sexuality and the trauma that she had suffered as a teen. Out of concern for her friend, Tracy escorted Rebecca back to the crew headquarters and had her spend the night in the room that Tracy was sharing with her boyfriend, Devin Hyde, who was a bartender on the ship. Reportedly, Rebecca left the couple's room in the early morning hours of March 22nd. At 5:45 a.m., the ship's surveillance cameras captured Rebecca in the crew lounge, reportedly on deck 5, where she was making a phone call using an internal phone line. On camera, Rebecca appeared to be wearing men's oversized clothing and was visibly distressed. Cameras then caught a young male worker approaching Rebecca to ask if everything was all right. And Rebecca is seen replying, "Yeah, fine," after which she walked away, pushing her hair back and putting her hands in her back pockets. These are mannerisms her parents say were common for her. The surveillance footage is the last time Rebecca was seen on board. By 9 a.m., Rebecca missed the start of her shift, and when she did not respond to pages over the ship's PA system, crew members set out to search the ship but found no trace of her. The U.S. Coast Guard and Mexican Navy scanned the waters that the Wonder had traveled at around the time of Rebecca's disappearance, but they too found nothing. 3 days after her disappearance, the Wonder returned to the port of Los Angeles, and the investigation was handed over to a detective from the Royal Bahamas Police Force because the Wonder was registered in the Bahamas. Investigators discovered a pair of flip-flops on the crew pool deck and attributed them to Rebecca. As such, they concluded that given that the seas were rough at the time of her disappearance, Rebecca could have been tossed off the ship by a rogue wave. This theory was quickly dispelled by private investigators hired by Rebecca's family, as Rebecca made her telephone call from the first deck, not the fifth. And the flip-flops found near the pool had another crew member's name on them and a cabin number written on it. And the style, the pink and flowery, and the size did not fit Rebecca. Further, a rogue wave would have had to have been at least 100 feet high in height to sweep Rebecca over the steel wall surrounding the pool area, and such a wave would have made significant damage to the pool well itself. There were no reports or storms or any rough seas on the morning that Rebecca vanished. These factors led the Coriams to strongly doubt Disney's claim about what happened to their beloved daughter. Others have speculated that Rebecca may have committed suicide, possibly because she was despondent over her romantic relationship with Tracy Medley, as there were problems within the very intense and dramatic relationship, at times wonderful and then at times awful. Others suggested that Rebecca was on the phone with a friend and not her lover, Tracy. And although she's been accused of being involved in Rebecca's death, Tracy claims that she never did anything to physically harm her friend, and she believes that Rebecca jumped because she had attempted suicide in the past. However, the Coriams also doubt that their daughter committed suicide by jumping overboard. She was typically cheerful and upbeat, and after her disappearance, her parents found Disneyland Paris passes in her quarters, a gift trip that she was apparently planning to surprise them with on her next break at home. These plans, as well as her ongoing Facebook exchanges with her mother, argue against suicide. Security on a Disney ship is ultra tight. You can't get on or off without an ID card, and the ship was out to sea, making it improbable that Rebecca walked off the ship on her own accord. In addition, on a ship that caters to families and their children, it's highly unlikely that the circumstances surrounding Rebecca's disappearance weren't recorded on closed-circuit television. To that end, Disney claims that they do not have any surveillance video of Rebecca going overboard. The day after Rebecca disappeared, flowers were placed near the crew pool, apparently by Disney, and they held a mini ceremony in Rebecca's honor. Yet it was unclear publicly and to the crew why Disney authorities performed such a service. Disney officials also did not disclose to the crew any information about the circumstances surrounding Rebecca's disappearance. A year later, on March 21st, 2012, the day before the first anniversary of her disappearance, Rebecca's father, Mike, received an email from a woman who claimed to have seen his daughter in August of 2011 with a dark-haired man in Venice, Italy. The woman said she was 85% sure it was Rebecca. Rebecca's uncle stated to the press that the email seemed legitimate. Quote, "It was very upsetting for everyone to think that she could be out there somewhere after all this time. And he wondered how she could have gotten there without her passport, which had been among the belongings her parents had recovered from her quarters." The Coriams have been critical of Disney's handling of the investigation, believing the company knows more than it claims to, as their actions have focused on avoiding negative publicity versus helping to solve this mystery. Rebecca's family settled a lawsuit against Disney out of court in 2015 for an undisclosed amount, and in exchange, the family agreed not to discuss their case publicly. In September of that year, the family held a memorial service for their missing daughter that included the planting of a mulberry tree in Grosvenor Park. Mike and Anne-Marie also created a website, rebecca-coriam.com, to help solicit information about their missing daughter. And while Rebecca's disappearance remains under investigation by the Bahamian police, and there is sufficient evidence that a crime took place, it's highly unlikely that this case will ever be officially solved. My sources for the story include Wikipedia, theguardian.com, Rebecca Coriam, Lost at Sea by John Ronson, 11/11/11, grunge.com, Inside the Mysterious Disappearance of Rebecca Coriam by Jennifer Deutschman, 9/24/21, cruiselawnews.com, What Happened to Disney Youth Counselor Rebecca Coriam on the Disney Wonder Cruise Ship 1 year ago by Jim Walker on March 21st, 2012, and CheshireLive.com, Rebecca Coriam Memorial Afternoon held in Grosvenor Park by Frank Barrett, 9/16/15. So what do you think happened, Bea?
Poor Rebecca, the poor love. So I absolutely believe that she was on the phone to Tracy. And I think what happened was Rebecca was really, really struggling with the fact that Tracy was much more cavalier about their relationship, casual, than Rebecca was, and that Tracy really was into her boyfriend, and that she had kind of committed to being with him rather than being with Rebecca. And when Tracy brought Rebecca back to her cabin, it was kind of just up in Rebecca's face that the relationship with Tracy was essentially over. And I think that she was absolutely heartbroken. I think that she was in the middle of really a mental crisis brought on, from my perspective, from working far too many hours, far too many weeks in a row, and that she was kind of at the end of her rope. And the fact that Disney didn't have any kind of support for anyone working those hours and struggling mentally, especially when these people are responsible for young children, is, I think, an absolute travesty. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, we've all heard the reports about the workers in China in working for Apple, how they've had to string up nets around the building to catch these young people who are working, 24/7, basically 7 days a week, and they live within the factory. They live on the factory's premises, and they're throwing themselves out windows because all they can see is a life of work in front of them. And I think that you just can't toil away like that without any respite. And especially if you're a young person and not have any kind of support. And if you are also struggling with the heartbreak of a romantic relationship that is has ended and it's in your face, you can't get away from the fact that, Tracy is with this other guy. It's right there. He also works on the ship. So there was just no hope in front of her. And I 100% believe that she went overboard, that she tossed herself overboard. And I also 100% believe that Disney saw it on film, that it's been captured on film on the CCTV, and that they knew it and they buried it. And it would have been terrible, terrible publicity for them, because we all know that the publicity surrounding the factory workers in China working for Apple, like that really did the company some harm. I don't know if they've even yet lived that one down, and they shouldn't. Honestly, they shouldn't, because of course they know what's going on. So I think that it just, would have gone a counter to the Disney wholesome family, supportive, happy, fun, loving place to work and be, would have gone in their face. But I absolutely believe that her suicide was caught on film, 100%. I think that they saw her go overboard. I don't think that anyone saw her in the moment go overboard, but I think when they reviewed the tape, they were like, shit. So you allow just a little bit, right, to satisfy the family. She was on the phone. She was distressed. Who knows what happened? It's a mystery. Bullshit to this wave thing too. Like, how ridiculous. Yeah. Like, how,
I agree.
Like, come on,
I know.
Like, for that alone, sue the fuck out of them. Yeah, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So everything points to, unfortunately, Rebecca. In my opinion, I think that she took her life. And when I, reached out to the other side, the hard part of sometimes when I reach out and I get the feeling of like what happened, like specifically down to the details, they don't hold back in the details. And I feel like she survived the jump into the ocean. And I think that it was a very scary time until she finally succumbed. I think that it was, it'd be dark. The ocean would be dark if she survived that jump. It would have taken her a little while. And the feeling that I had was that it was a very difficult crossing. But they also kind of let me know that she's working on a new blueprint, a new plan to come back down. And they kind of gave me an indication that it would take about, in our time, like 25 years or so. And that she was going to, as I wrote down, she spends much of her time here working on a new plan of more secure choices. So I think that she's going to probably tackle a little bit less in the next lifetime, because she struck me as a super sensitive soul, just a very, I don't know, I guess sensitive is just the best word. She's just soft and sweet and
nurturing, maybe.
Yeah, just sensitive, sensitive to other opinions, sensitive to energies around her, and probably empathic too, a little bit. So more love. I feel terrible for, we feel terrible for the parents always on these things, because they're just left with no answers, lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. And Dincy could have answered this for them. They could have put their family out of their misery and just said, you know what, we fucked up, and here's a settlement, and we're sorry, and we're going to change our policies. And they chose not to do any of that. So my opinion of Disney just went, so whatever.
Capitalism at its best.
I know, unfortunately. So anyway, sad. But
well, I appreciate the insight. I am sorry that she was pushed to that point,
Yeah.
And I'm also sad that there isn't any closure necessarily for the family. So
right. I think they know. I think Disney probably, in the settlement of that suit, probably indicated, okay, it's likely she went over. Because why else would they agree not to discuss the case?
Well, that, and they also they had a formal kind of memorial ceremony.
Yeah.
After the settlement. So yeah.
I think that there was an indication. We will never admit to this. It's off the record, but we feel that she went overboard. So very sad. Anyway.
Okay. So next week's case is the last in our series at the moment for cruises and death and mayhem off of a cruise ship. And that case surrounds a woman named Ashley Barnett. She was a clean and sober aspiring actress who, on a 3-day cruise from Long Beach, California to Ensenada in Mexico, died of an apparent drug overdose. So we'll dig into that case and find out, unfortunately, what happened. The reason that this case, has gained prominence is because Ashley's mother has been a very strong advocate for bringing legislation forward to protect both passengers and workers on cruise ships. So
good. It's so obvious after doing this series, right, that we absolutely need more legislation. There needs to be more protection for women in particular on these cruise ships. We have all kinds of protections in airports and on airplanes, and we have nothing on cruise ships. And that just, why?
Because these are flags of convenience. They're not, they don't have a jurisdiction here in the United States. So
see, but why don't we make some sort of maritime law that in order to dock in the United States, you have to have some sort of, license that would, if one of our sovereign citizens gets harmed at sea, that our authorities are immediately called in, and that we can claim jurisdiction over what might have happened to that. Obviously, that's my why can't we do this? And it's probably a lot more complicated than that. But
well, it is because of maritime law internationally. If you're, like I had mentioned last week, if you're off the shore of another country, then that country has jurisdiction. or where your flag is flying. If it's a registered, ship in the Bahamas, the Bahamian police have jurisdiction. And yes, the FBI does have the ability to come in and help get involved in the solution of the case. But typically by the time the FBI has access to the ship, the situation's been cleaned up.
Yeah.
Forensic evidence is lost,
Well,
and or it's poorly collected.
Preserving crime scenes or something, there should be, I don't know, something more than what is there, because it's just enough of the 300 people go missing off of cruises every year. That's a shit ton of people. So
it's not 300 a year. It was between a certain time frame that 300 people went missing. Ashley's mother has been very prolific in getting some legislation passed, like peepholes on cruise ship doors, to cabin doors, rape kits being installed on certain cruise lines. And typically doctors and nurses are contracted. They're not officially employed by the cruise industry. So there is pushes to get certain legislation and better protections established. But for now, I think it's buyer beware. It's no different than if you're traveling to a foreign country, even if you're boarding that ship in the United States. And that's what you have to remember.
Yeah. Who knows that though? Who's aware of that? See, that's the thing.
I'm trying to tell people now.
Well, I understand that, Sandy, but we need
our audience
millions of people to follow this podcast. Speaking of which, if you are one of the millions that eventually will see this podcast, Amateur Hour, hit the like button, ring the bell, and subscribe. And if you'd like to comment, we love your questions. Usually we'll try and answer them on air if at all possible. Let us know how you're liking it. Okay. All right, sweetheart. I love you so much. I will see you next week.
Too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.